The creature pressed its pale hands against the window pane with an apparent strength wholly at odds with its emaciated body. The glass bowed. The creature howled. Daniel winced. His hands were clenched and sweaty, his neck hairs standing at attention like good soldiers. It has hold of me again, he knew. His uncle called it the Moonwalker, an abomination, ungodly, without soul, said it came from some parallel dimension to wreak havoc on a wounded world. Such ramblings were not particularly more coherent than anything else the old man had said for the last 4 decades, but Daniel was glad at least one person believed him. He'd first seen it 2 weeks ago. He'd been straying farther from his house than usual, as ever on lookout for peace and quiet in what remained of the woods. Around the house, the trees were all dead or dying, save for that one fir by the garage. But things were different down by the creek. There's green, at least. It was all just moss and duckweed, but Daniel would take what he was given. There was still no need for a respirator down there, besides. That was a damned luxury nowadays. Every place else in town, the last vestiges of a failed experiment had already become memory, and so had oxygen. Now, Dead Branch Valley looked like every other place on Earth, that meaning dark, and for the first time anyone could remember, its name actually fit. Speaking of dark, it was dark when Daniel had first seen his new neighbor. Of course, it was always dark now. 15 years had gone by since the sun had been inexplicably replaced with a black hole, and 5 months had passed since that aforementioned experiment went tits up. When the newcomer first arrived, Daniel hadn't known what the fuck he was looking at, and 2 weeks later, nothing had changed. Though he was beginning to learn its rhythms, when it came and went, the behaviors that meant it was about to leave and Daniel would finally be able to sleep. He knew it always came from east of his house. For a while, the motion sensor light above the front deck had consistently sent it scuttling back into the woods. Eventually, it got wise and figured out how to avoid the light. Then, worse, it stopped caring. I really did not need to see that much of you, Daniel thought when first he had spied the creature's pale, gaunt body aglow beneath the motion sensor light like Jesus fucking Christ himself descending from the heavens. That's when he finally had to stop coping by convincing himself it might just be a weird-looking coyote. Not that that theory made any sense to begin with. The only wild animals left on Earth were bugs. Would that he had seen a coyote by the creek. Instead, he'd seen this fucker. Humanoid, give or take, naked, bald from noggin to butthole, skinny, skeletal almost, kind of veiny. It was looking away from him, so he never saw its face. Still hadn't. Daniel had been more curious than afraid at first, until he came to his fucking senses. It was the way the creature had been crouching that really did it. He couldn't explain it, he just did not believe a human would ever position its body like that. On the plus side, the run home had made for good exercise, though, weirdly, he did wish he had stayed long enough to get a glimpse of that face. The build-up was killing him. He knew it had to happen eventually, and he was not excited for the inevitable reveal. So he avoided looking at it. Kept the shades down, made sure the security cameras he'd set up around the house were all set to record at the shittiest possible resolution. He wanted to know where it was, what it was doing, and nothing more. He stayed up till dawn every night. Dawn being a relative term in a world without a sun. He told himself the insomnia was because he was busy deciphering the secrets of this strange creature and its mysterious origins. But that was bullshit. He was a pussy and he was afraid to go to bed, and God could suck it! Even so, the last 2 weeks hadn't been so bad. The thing was a decent neighbor, honestly, if not a little nosy. Came over every couple days, wandered, did a little spooky moaning, and Daniel respected its personal space by never so much as leaving his front deck. Yeah, that's why he bought his groceries online now and had padlocks on all his windows. It was his incredible respect for his new neighbor's personal space and privacy. And, in return, the creature never, say, tried to break into his house. Until tonight. This time, Daniel had been alerted to its arrival not by the security cams, but by it slamming itself against his front door and screaming like a banshee. Daniel had screamed as well, less like a banshee and more like a little girl, he wasn't afraid to admit. He had dozed off on the couch watching Seinfeld reruns. For some reason, his immediate priority when the creature had shown up was to turn off the TV. He just really didn't need to watch George Costanza ruin his life with avoidably terrible decisions right now. Now Daniel was paralyzed, still on his couch, sitting up straight as a wooden beam. He couldn't see the creature clearly through the blinds, but just that silhouette, backlit by the motion sensor light, was enough. The thing had a way of making Daniel feel drunk, or hypnotized, or high, or drunk. It was sniffing at the glass, breathing heavily as it swung its head back and forth, trying to get a look inside, and those hands never stopped pressing and pawing. When Daniel finally willed himself to look away, he gave his living room a scan. All over the coffee table there were stacks of old newspapers, notebook entries, drawings. The bookshelves on the far wall were dusty and disorganized. Yeah, nothing helpful. Also, am I really this much of a slob? A distorted groan snapped his attention back to his window. Nothing had really changed over there. Dude was still sniffing and being weird. Does it even know I'm in here? And why try to break in now? Why tonight? His thoughts were gaining clarity, that drunken feeling wearing off. Then, it came to him. The gun! His next thought was, wow, I'm fucking stupid. He'd bought a handgun years ago in case of bear attacks or robbers or Jehovah's Witnesses. He was pretty sure it was sitting on top of his fridge beside a solitary box of ammunition he'd never even opened. Wonder if it even works anymore. Probably more dust than gun by now. Regardless, his goal was clear. He had to get over to his kitchen without being heard. Or seen? Can it see me through those blinds? He had no idea, but with a sickening feeling now building inside his stomach, he realized he also had no choice. Standing up was easy. Beginning his epic journey, not so much. Daniel's house was small, but somehow the distance between him and his kitchen looked like a mile. It's now or never, dumb shit. He crept carefully, thankful he was barefoot, focusing on one step at a time. When he got to the window, his heart rate kicked up a gear or 7. The creature's shadow, projected by the motion sensor light's glorious display, was dancing on the old wooden floorboards. Ha! I'm stepping on your face! Then he realized it looked somewhat like the shadow was playing with his toes. Fuck you! That's disgusting! Daniel realized this was the closest he had ever been to it. He looked up and to his right. That glass has never felt so fucking thin. As if in answer to his thoughts, the creature slammed one hand against the window pane so hard Daniel peed himself a little. A lot. At least I don't see a crack. Another slam. Through a narrow gap in the blinds, he saw it. A hairline fracture had formed. Daniel froze, felt his eyes widen. You know what? I'm done having thoughts. The moans and heavy breathing did not relent. If anything, dude was just getting rowdier, sniffing and wheezing and groaning like an old door hinge. It sounded like it was in pain. Maybe that should have made Daniel more sympathetic, but somehow, he just felt disgust. Could just be fucking with me for all I know. He took another step. The floorboards creaked. The creature didn't react to the noise, so Daniel fucking gunned it. He ran the distance in a couple of strides, then paused and caught his breath. He reached above the refrigerator, grabbed the goods, laid them out atop the kitchen counter. His hands were shaking, and for a moment he wondered whether he would even be able to load his weapon, let alone aim it. He felt like he was in one of those nightmares where performing simple tasks felt clumsy and impossible. When he walked back out to his living room, would the floorboards become quicksand? He slapped his cheek. Come on, you little bitch! Get her done! By the time the gun was loaded and Daniel was back in his living room, he was feeling almost confident. Then he went to aim and saw that his hands were still apparently made of Jell-O pudding. Fuckity fuck shit fuck. The creature gave the window a third slam. The crack spread, gained a couple new fingers. Daniel had to grit his teeth to keep himself from screaming in some deranged combination of fear and rage. He was about to squeeze the trigger when something occurred to him. What if it's bulletproof? That'd be pretty funny, huh? He shook his head. Then a more reasonable concern presented itself. What if he took the shot, injured it, but didn't kill it? What if this was the perfect way to piss it off while simultaneously breaking the window that separated him from it? What the fuck am I doing? There was only one viable plan, he realized. The door. He walked up to his front door, took a deep breath, pooed a little, not really. The thing was now licking his window. Deranged fucker. Daniel closed his eyes and composed himself. He was feeling an unexpected anger. He was realizing how much anxiety this creature had caused him, how much of his time it had wasted. All right, motherfucker. Daniel gave the front door 3 hard knocks. Bang, bang, bang! He never could have prepared himself for his neighbor's reaction. He'd expected maybe a slow, curious approach. Instead, the fucker screamed at the top of its lungs and took off so fast, Daniel wasn't entirely sure which way it went. Thankfully, a hearty slam on his front door confirmed it was lined up just where he wanted it. Said slam also got Daniel to let out an involuntary, high-pitched, "Oh boy!" Daniel swung around, raised his gun, squeezed the trigger, and fired. His ears rang. A cloud of smoke and wooden splinters had erupted from his front door. The creature made, well, the worst sound Daniel had ever heard. Not a shriek or a scream. No, it was crying? Unsure of what he had just done, Daniel held his breath. Then his eyes found the bullet hole in his front door and, more specifically, what lay just beyond said hole. It took him a little while to realize what he was looking at. Oh. It was an eye. A big blue eye, staring right back at him. It wasn't the eye of a coyote, or a bear, or a cat, or a reptile, or a monster. It was the frightened, horrifyingly familiar eye of another man.